Good morning, Morai V'Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on Daf Ayin Bet Amud Aleph, towards the bottom of the Daf, starting a new Mishnah. Today's Amud is being learned the Schud Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, Yasmin Bat Sarah, Shahram Shalom Ben Turan, Betoch Sha'ar Cholei Yisrael, Amen. And also for the well-being of Achenu Bet Yisrael, that they started the war, should be Be'ezrat Hashem safe and sound for them, Amen. So we are starting a new Mishnah, again continuing on the halachot of Yayin Nesech, and here we're going to be primarily discussing attachment, chibur of wine, which is kasher, with yayin nesech, when and when not is going to cause the yayin that's mutar pouring into or connected with yayin nesech a problem. Says the Mishnah, Natal et hamashpech umadad letoch selechito shel oved kochavim. If you are selling wine and you are pouring the wine that you sold into the barrel of Ovdei Kochavim. Now they used to use a funnel, a mashpech, which is wider on the top, narrower on the bottom, in order to pour properly without a spill, right? So you take your funnel and you funnel the wine into the barrel, the container of the Oved Kochavim. Says the Mishnah, depends. Afterwards, v'chazaru madad letoch selochito shel Yisrael. If, as the mashpech, as the funnel is still wet, you take the same funnel without washing it, and you use it to funnel wine into the bottle, the barrel of a Jew, im yesh bo akev. Three connections are not considered connection for Tum'ah or for Tara. What are they? Nisok means when you directly pouring from one to another, the direct flow is Nisok. Right? A 90-degree flow coming down, that is Nisok. Katafretz means you have a connection between two bodies of water on a slant from up going down. So imagine if you have a pour of water or just a flow of water from one source to another, and on the way down you touch it, whether or not that's considered connecting the flow going down the slide. Is it considered connecting point A and point B for Tum'ah v'Tahara, or is it not considered a connection, right? And mashke tofeach means you have again, imagine you have two pools of water in the ground, and you have the area between them that is wet. But it is not wet that the water is literally sitting on it. It's wet that if you touch it, it makes your finger wet. But if your finger now touches a dry surface, that dry surface does not get wet. So it's, it's moist. It's heavily moist, but it's not really, really wet with water sitting on it. That's tofeach. If it would be more wet, that you would make your finger wet to make other things wet as well, would be tofeach al menat latpiach, which is a higher level. But if it's just tofeach, it's not considered chibur, that these two bodies are connected via the water that's in between, the moist that is in between them. So therefore, if you have a tameh touching the bottom when there is nisok, the top does not become tameh, right? If you have a tameh touching or going into the water on a slide, the source on the top stays tahor. And also, same is for tahara, says the Mishnah in Taharot. That means if you have, let's say, two pools of water in the ground, each one of them is not 40 se'ah, which is the shi'ur of mikveh. The minimum shi'ur of mikveh is when you have 40 se'ah water, a certain amount of water you have, that now it's kasher to go dip in it. Use it for tevilat kelim, for tevilat adam. But now you want to do a tevilat keli a little bit. You have a pool of water which is here, a pool of water which is there, and in between them is wet. So is that considered chibur? If it's mashket tofeach, if it's only tofeach, it's not real stream of water, that would not be considered a connection, and hence the mikveh would be pasul. If it is considered a connection, then you could have 40 se'ah in connection, in combination of both of them together. So that's the Mishnah in Taharot. That these three scenarios, these three situations of nisok, katafres, and tofeach, mashke tofeach, is not considered a connection in halachot of tum'ah v'tahara. Not for tum'ah and not for tahara. Fine. So says the Gemara, ashboren chibur. Shboren, Rashi says, means when you have water gathered in a ditch in the ground, that is the water that is steady gathered in one place, that's ashboren, gathered together. Now, of course, the Rishonim ask, according to Rashi, how do you read the rest of the Mishnah? Because it says, ashboren is chibur letum'ah v'tahara, is considered a connection combining the water that's in it for both tum'ah v'tahara. Now we understand what the tahara means. Tahara means if you have 40 se'ah, it's mikveh chazak u'baruch. But what does it mean, the tum'ah? You can't say that anything that touches it becomes tameh, because if you have a ditch in the ground and you have water in it, that water is considered, help me out, mechubar l'karka. It's considered attached to the ground. Things that are attached to the ground, are they mikabel tum'ah? Do they accept the susceptible to tum'ah? Of course not. They're not. Karka does not accept tum'ah. It's not susceptible to tum'ah. And so is anything that is attached to the ground. So if you have a natural body of water, of course it does not become susceptible to tum'ah. It's not become mikabel tum'ah. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna. Nisok. Now this is where the chidush really starts. Listen well. Amar Rav Huna, nisok vekatafres umashke tofeach. These three items that we just learned about, when it comes to the halachot of tum'ah v'tahara, which the Mishnah in Taharot says they're not considered chibur letum'ah v'tahara, it's not considered attachment. If I'm pouring, it's not connecting the two sources on the bottom and the top, and same is with the sliding water or with the mashket tofeach. It's only for tum'ah v'tahara, that's not considered connection. But guess what it is connection for? When talking about yain nesech, it's worse. It's considered connection for yain nesech. That means if I pour from yain That's kasher lema'adarin. Badas bet Yosef, amazing. You're pouring it down in yain nesech. My whole bottle is nesech now. Because the nisok, the kiluach, the wine that is pouring down, connecting the bottom and the top, transfers the status of nesech to my bottle up here, pouring down. And same is if it's sliding down, and same is in mashke tofeach. If you have a little wine here, that's yain nesech, a little wine there, that's yain kasher, and in between them is tofeach. Says Rav Huna, all three cases is considered connection, and hence it will be asur. Right? Says the Gemara. So Amareh, Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. Rav Nachman is a peer, considered one of the peers of Rav Huna. It says, where do you get this from? How did you come to this? It's a Mishnah that seems to say exactly not like that. So where did you fabricate this halakha? The Bayai Nesech is different. And maybe you'll tell me from this very Mishnah in Perek Dalet of Taharot you see that. How so? Says the Gemara, says Rav Nachman. Menalacha. How do you know this halacha? Ilema, if you want to say miditlan from this very Mishnah that we just said, hanisok va'katafres va'mashke tofeach eno chibur lo l'tumah v'lo tahara. That nisok, katafres, and mashke tofeach, these three scenarios of connection, is not considered connection for tumah v'tahara. And you maybe want to read into the Mishnah that only for tum'ah v'tahara is not considered chibur, is not considered connection. But for yain nesech, haleinyan yain nesech, heveh chibur. For yain nesech, he will be chibur. Maybe that's how you want to learn. Says Rab Nachman, you can't learn like that. Why? Because look at the sefa of the Mishnah. What does the sefa, the last part of the Mishnah say? Emasefa. Look at the end of the same Mishnah. The Mishnah we just learned together a minute ago said at the end in the Sefa, ha'ashboren chibur letum'ah v'tahara. That if you have ashboren, which means you have gathered body of liquid in the ground, which is considered chibur, it's considered connection. So there also Mishnah says the tumah v'tahara. You want to suggest that only for tumah v'tahara is a connection, but not for yain nesech? Because if you have to make your mind, says Rab Nachman. If you want to learn the Mishnah, that when Rabbeinu HaKadosh wrote the Mishnayot, is hinting to you a case that's not mentioned in the Mishnah, and is coming to hint that this Mishnah only is said for tumah v'tahara, but not for yain nesech. So then the sefa of the Mishnah also should be hinting, not for yain nesech, and we know that that's not correct. So therefore, that tells you that you cannot learn possibly the Mishnah hinting anything about yain nesech. So says Rab Nachman, this Mishnah is X'd out. You cannot learn anything about yain nesech from the Mishnah in Mesechet Tarot, Perek Dalet, Mishnah Tet. So says the Gemara, 2 lines up. From this Mishnah in Tarot, you can learn nothing. Says the Gemara, Tanan. Let's bring another raya. And the raya is going to be from our Mishnah. And that's how this whole thing started. Our Mishnah says, if you take a funnel and you pour wine through the funnel inside yain nesech of the goy, and then and then you take the same funnel and you pour wine into the barrel of a Jew. The wine that you pour into the barrel of the Jew is yain nesech. How so? If you have the bottom lip of the mashpech bent in, that stops some droplets of wine in it, and therefore, from the first pour that you had inside the kli of the goy, you still have some remnants of droplets of wine inside the funnel, then you're in big trouble. And the wine that you're pouring into the kli, into the vessel of the Jew now, all is going to become yain nesech as well. Ha'kevet yain b'makam mitzra. And says the Gemara, this is again trying to bring a proof for Rav Huna, the strange din that Rav Huna seems to have fabricated that you pour the wine and the nisok is considered chibur. Says the Gemara, you know where he saw it from? From our Mishnah. Because how in the world did the wine in the funnel become yain nesech? It's a funnel, for God's sake. You put the thing on the lip, on the top of the barrel, and you pour wine. The yain nesech is on the bottom here. How did the wine on top over here get the yain nesech? Didn't touch. The only way he could have gotten yain nesech is because there's a direct pour from the lip of this mashpech into the barrel of the wine of the goy, which is yain nesech, and the yain nesech status connected upward through the nisok, and hence you see from our Mishnah that nisok heveh chibur, that pouring down is considered connected. Amazing raya. And says, no, not so amazing. You know why? Says the Gemara, Shmamina nisok heveh chibur. Says the Gemara, no. Tani Rab Chia says it's not a raya at all, because Rab Chia already learned about our Mishnah, thinking of your chidush and avoiding that scenario, saying that our Mishnah is talking about the case shepechasato slochito, that this is only in a case that you were a generous wine seller and you poured it until the wine came. You see, sometimes when you're using funnel, you have to be very careful at the very end, right? Because funnel is wide on the top, and if you miss cheshbon, right, the top of the barrels are always very narrow, and you pour a little extra and you fill up the whole thing, right? And then the wine gets connected with the wine. It's always a problem, right? So it says the Gemara, Rav Chisda already explained our Mishnah that's talking about pechasato selochito, that the wine overflow backed up. If the wine backed up into the funnel, of course it's yain nesech. What's the hidush? That's chibur 101. You know, that's the classic case of chibur. Mamash yain nesech came into the funnel. Of course, it's going to be the remnants is going to be yain nesech. So therefore, you have no raya. Again, back to square one. Where in the world did Rav Huna get his din from that nisok, when it comes to yain nesech, is a problem? Says the Gemara. Avalok pchasato sedichito mai. But if it's not, the Gemara says, wait a second. How can he say that? How can Rav Chisda say that? Does it mean that does Rav Chisda mean that if it was not pechasato sedichito, if it didn't overflow and back up, it would be mutar? So if it's mutar, you should learn from there that nitzok is not a problem. And who is a kasha on? Rav Huna. So you have a beferish kasha, you have a clear bombe kasha on Rav Huna from our Mishnah. So make your mind. However you slice our Mishnah is either going to be a raya for Rav Huna, which is great, or it's going to be a slap in the face of the svara of Rav Huna, and you should bring a raya from our Mishnah that Rav Huna is wrong. So let's do that then. This Gemara says. So tifshot the nisok enu chibur. You should learn from our Mishnah that if you use a funnel and you pour into the wine of a goy, the remnants of the wine in the funnel is mutar, you want to say that, so then you should learn from that Rav Huna is wrong. That a connection through pouring is not connection for yain nesech. Says the Gemara, no, you can't go that far. All Rav Chisda is saying is, we remain with our old age time immemorial question of whether or not nisok for yain nesech is a chibur or is not chibur. We have no raya for that. All he's telling you is the Mishnah that's talking about the wine in the funnel becoming yain nesech is talking about when they actually backed up and touched, not by nisok. The Mishnah is not talking about nisok. What's the halacha by nisok? I don't know. Stays as question. Question mark for now. So says the Gemara, lo, pchasato sedichito tifshod lach, the asur, and nisok tibai. Nisok stays as a question. Tashma, says the Gemara, let's bring another attempt of raya. Hame'are mikeli lekeli. When you pour from one kli, from one vessel to another vessel, from one barrel of wine to another barrel of wine, Et sheme'areh mimenu mutar. What you pour from is going to be mutar. Hadebeni beni asur. Says the Gemara, when you pour, there are three elements. There's the bottle on the top, there's the bottle on the bottom, and then there is the liquid in the air, right? So the Mishnah says what you poured from is mutar. The bottle, what remains the bottle is mutar. You see from that the wine in the air is asur. How did it become asur? Because nisok is chibur. Gishmak. You see, nisok is chibur. The pouring is a connection. Because otherwise, why is the wine, only the wine in the bottle on top mutar? The whole thing should be mutar if you caught it in mid-air. It's mashma that if you caught it mid-air is no good. Says the Gemara, Shwamina nisok chibur. You should see from here that nisok is considered a connection. So says the Gemara, no, is nisok chibur afilu de gaveh de manonami litzar. I says, wait a second. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't do that. Because if you tell me nisok is chibur, guess what else should be asur? The entire wine in the bottle on the top should be asur also. It's connection. So therefore, what you're saying makes no sense. It doesn't even. It's dead on arrival. It can't even make sense. The word, the vertlach, doesn't make sense. Right? What's the teichverter? Says the Gemara. Halakasha says no, that's not a kasha, because we're talking about a case that you did like this. You poured like this and you stopped it. So there is a whole stream of wine coming down that's not attached to anything on the top. Like it's just in the air. You poured and it stopped. Yeah. So the wine inside is tahor because it's disconnected from anything. Yeah. But this whole thing in the air is asur. The kamaktiv ketufi, that you cut it off from the source on the top, you poured and you stopped quickly. But you see that the connection of this stream of wine coming down is considered halachically connected to the wine on the bottom, which is nesech, and therefore all the wine that's still in the air, mid-air, is considered yain nesech. Nisok is chibur geschmack. Says the Gemara, wait a second. That's very good if you stop the Mishnah in the middle. Yeah, then you can read whatever you want, but once you read the rest of it, you see it doesn't read. Ultamech emasefa, read the rest of the Mishnah. Et she'ira letocho udasur. And the Mishnah says, what you poured inside on the bottom is asur. So if you want to read like that, say, what's inside is asur, but what's in the air is mutar. So if you read the Resha, is mashma one way. Because the Resha says that when you pour, the top one is mutar. The Sefer says the bottom is asur. So what's in the air? If you want to pay attention to the Resha, you would think it's asur. If you want to pay attention to the Sefer, it's mutar. So you cannot make such a diuk. The Mishnah is certainly not coming to teach you the halachot of the wine in the mid-air. Because if it was, it would not be a contradiction from Resha to Sefer of the Mishnah. So says the Gemara, you can't bring any proof from this either. One last tashma, and then we'll call it a day. Tashma, hame'are mihavid lebor kiluach hayored misfat hachavid lemata asur. If you are pouring from a barrel into a pit of wine that's yain nesech, the wine on the top is badatz, edah haredit, mamash, and on the bottom is yain nesech. Says the Gemara, what happens is the kiluach hayored. Now we are actually talking about the kiluach hayored, the stream of wine coming down, misfat chavit lemata, from the lip of this chavit downward, is asur. It's considered asur. That sounds to be like a checkmate raya, right? You're pouring, and the water in the wine rather in the air is yain nesech, says the Mishnah. So that's like checkmate raya, geschmack. Says the Gemara, no, don't get too excited, because Tirgima Rav Sheshet already spoke about this, and he said we're talking about the scenario in which Ovet Kochavim Me'are. You know who is pouring this wine?
and Oved Kochavim. You know why it's Yain Nesech? Because like any other wine that a goy pours becomes Yain Nesech. This also, not talking about Nisok, not talking about Chibur with the wine down there. So says the Gemara, if that's correct, if that's the case, afilu gava de chavita nami mitzar. When you're moving the wine inside the barrel also, and if you are Oved Kochavim, when you pour and then you stop, how in the world did the wine inside here stay mutar? You're telling me that the wine only from the stream down, from the lip of the chavit downwards, is asur. How about the wine inside? That's mutar. If it's a goy pouring, how in the world does that stay mutar? Says the Gemara, a fundamental yesod here, which we have to discuss halachically. Says the Gemara, koach de'ovet kochavim midrabananhu. This is not a real pouring for Avodah Zarah. It's a koach of ovet kochavim. When the koach of ovet kochavim indirectly moves the wine, because you're not touching the wine, you're just moving it with your koach. In that case, says the Gemara, is only Isur de Rabbanan. It's not Isur Yainesech Deoraita. And you know what did the Gezerah de Rabbanan include? Chachamim, to begin with, only included what comes out of the Kli, not the wine inside the Kli itself. The Midrabanan hu de Asir, hahu de Nafik lebarai gazrube, what comes out with the Koach of a Goy, that's what they Asir Chachamim. But hahu de legavai, Lo gazrube Rabbanan, what it stays inside the chavit, they never made the gezerah on, and hence we stayed without any proper source for Rav Huna so far, and we're going to continue this and Be'ezrat Hashem finish the discussion in the next shiur.